I've had a lot of people that I've talked to that have asked me about, your daily walk, getting closer to God. I can't hear God talking. I don't know what direction I'm supposed to go. I'm having trouble following His lead. Um, it's always hard to know exactly what's going on. The Lord will push us where He needs to be, but there's certain things that help in your daily walk. And, for me, I'll take you back to ancient Israel when they were under Solomon and some of the later kings. They had the temple. Well, the temple symbolizes a lot for us. God set the temple under specific design for a reason. When you went to that temple there in Jerusalem, they had an outer courtyard to it. When you first entered, you come into an outer courtyard, and that was where all the everybody could come and gather and learn about God and worship God. The Gentiles, everybody was allowed in that area. And then as you went from there, you progressed into the inner courtyard. And the inner courtyard was reserved for the worshipers of God, the Hebrews, the children of Israel, and people that had converted and were considered members of the country and the religion. And then you had, as you went further on into the house of God, you come to the altar area where the sacrifices were given up, and people didn't normally go in there only to sacrifice. Usually it was just the high priest and the priest that run things, and the people that were over the sacrifices for the most part. And then people would come in just to sacrifice, ask for forgiveness, and get the animal sacrificed at the certain times of the year and certain celebrations. Then they would leave. They didn't spend much time there because you were getting into a more holy place. And then beyond that, you went into the Holy of Holies, and that's where the Ark of the Covenant was, and that's where it was where the actual presence of God was considered to be. I mean, this was where the only person that ever went in this was the high priest. Once a year, he would enter with a sacrificial lamb to sacrifice and put the blood. He would sprinkle the blood of the sacrificed lamb on the horns of the altar of power for the forgiveness of the sins of the nation. And this was, if he didn't sanctify himself right before he went in, it would kill him, because it was only you had to be really pure to go into this area. Well, Paul said that we are temples of God, because see, through the blood of Christ we're sanctified. We're considered innocent. We're not just not guilty. We're just innocent. It's in God's eyes, we have not committed sin, and this gives the Holy Spirit legal right to dwell within us. And we have to realize that our body is a temple, and there's a spot in us where the Holy Spirit dwells, where it has taken up residence within us, and that is our Holy of Holies, somewhere in us. I don't know where. It doesn't say. It's not really that important. It's just that we know that the Holy Spirit dwells within us. And then in every one of us, we have portions just like that temple. We have an outer courtyard, which is us that we present to the world, that we go through. We have our inner courtyard, which is us worshiping with other Christians at church and worship and prayer, counseling each other, helping each other out. But we also have an altar within us, within our temple. And that altar is that point where we come and meet God. And if you're having trouble, if you're struggling in your daily walk, if you're having trouble with that connection with God, or if you've drifted far away, which so many of us do in our daily walk, we get further away from God, and we don't know, and it's hard to come back to God. So what we have to do is, if you look at Isaiah, when he went up on the mount and faced off against all the 30 prophets of Baal or 40 prophets of Baal, whatever it was, and he come up there and he told them, well, y'all just bring down fire. Whoever can bring down the fire, their God's the mightiest. And they did all their stuff, and they did their ceremonies and built up the big piles of wood, and nothing happened because God stopped it. Well, what Isaiah did when it came his turn, he said, well, let's see how my God can do. Well, the first thing he did was go over to the old altar. There was an old altar on top of that mountain that hadn't been used in years, and what he did was the first step he took was went over and he started rebuilding that altar, and he put the stones back in place, and he got it set right, and then he called on the Lord. And we've got to do the same thing for ourselves. When we drift apart, or even in just our daily walk as we're going through, we have to work on that connection, on that point, that altar when you come to your altar within you, you have to come to it with a humble, broken heart. You have to let down your walls in order to properly come to that altar. And in order to approach that altar and rebuild that altar, you see, the devil rebuilds, he builds fortresses and strongholds in us of sinful habits that we start doing, whether it be drugs or drinking, cigarettes. I mean, anything that's not healthy and becomes a vice on us is bad. And we all know it, and it's things that the devil builds up and he reinforces those areas. So it's so hard for us to get by. Well, when you come to that altar and you start meeting God, what happens is you start praying to God, and as you start closing in your daily walk and get closer to God and working on it, these barriers, these strongholds start coming down, and and those stones start falling away one at a time, and those stones go into rebuilding your altar. And you'll start building a bigger, better altar day by day. Each time you come to Him, every time you bring yourself to Him with that humble heart, and you surrender to Him in prayer, you're rebuilding your altar. So in order for us to connect, and this isn't just me looking at the sky going, "Oh Lord, I love you." It's a personal experience, because that's where we meet. We are the temple of God now. So we have to learn how to build that temple within us, because that is that place where we seek forgiveness, where we hear from God, where He speaks to us, where He leads us in our daily walk. So we have to remember that as we go through here, as we go through our daily walk, rebuild your altar. That's everything. That is our daily walk, is that meeting point with God. Because the better you build that altar, the closer you get to Him, the more you get your connection with Him, the more He can talk to Him, the more He can help you. I hope it helped you. I want nothing but the best for you. I love you, and God bless.